Thank you everyone for coming along. I appreciate you giving up your Thursday evening. Thanks for being here with us. I'll briefly kind of introduce myself and then let Caro introduce themselves as well. So my name is Claire. I work at Canongate Books, a publisher which is based in Edinburgh mainly, and also London. I work as an editorial assistant and I'm lucky enough to work in the non-fiction department. So a lot of nature writing comes our way, and I'm really lucky to work with some authors from our list like Marshall Farrell and Amanda Thompson, some brilliant nature writers, and I also work with our canons list, so lots of kind of classic nature writing in there, Rachel Carson, Annie Dillard, that sort of thing. So I'm very excited to be here with Caro. I'm now part of the Nan Shepherd Prize kind of team, but we've just taken over recently from Caro, who's one of the co-founders. So they'll be able to say a lot more about that, and has gone on also to found Porty Literary, which I will let you talk about now, Caro.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm Caro Clarke, alongside my brilliant colleague Megan Reid. We created in 2019 the Nan Shepherd Prize for underrepresented nature writers. And we're very excited for it to be in its third year this year. So what we're, oh yes, I should say a bit more about myself. Since working on the Nan Shepherd Prize and loving working with new authors, I decided to become a literary agent. So I created Portobello Literary, which is my agency, and I represent quite a lot of brilliant nature writers, some of them who have come from the Nan Shepherd Prize. And so this year, Canongate decided it would be faster if I just joined as a judge and offered representation to the winner. So I'm very excited to read all of your entries. And what we're going to do today is to break down the brief. The great thing about the Nan Shepherd Prize is that the entry that you use, sorry, I have a cat who loves Zoom. The entry that you use to submit to the prize can then be used to submit to agents and publishers. So none of the work that you do is lost or is useless in general, and can be put away at the end of the prize. It's really something, a stepping stone to you finding publication. Claire, do you want to do the next slide?
I do. I am having trouble doing that. Oh, here we go. Perfect.
I think this one's yours, Claire.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to kind of fill you in a little bit more on the background of the prize, which, to be fair, Caro has done pretty well. So a little bit more about the prize itself. It runs every 2 years. So we had a 2019 winner and a 2021 winner, and so now we're on to 2023. But it was named after Nan Shepherd, who was a Scottish kind of mountaineer and a nature writer, and whose experience of writing was all about nature writing was all about not necessarily the view from the top, but the view whilst you're doing it. So kind of nature writing, however you might experience it, and your specific circumstances and experiences of it, which was kind of the founding inspiration for the prize. And The Living Mountain is probably Nan's most famous book, which we publish and which we're very proud to publish, and which has kind of become a classic of nature writing very quickly. And you might recognize Nan from the Scottish note, which is on so. We've got a couple of our previous winners here, which you may have seen around in bookshops. So our kind of inaugural prize winner was Nina with Small Bodies of Water. And then Marshall's book, very excitingly, Uprooting, is coming out next week on Thursday. So do make sure you get a copy. But they've both been tremendously well received by the press and by the nature writing community. Yeah, this could be you next year on the next one. So I'll let Caro jump in here.
Yes, so essentially the submission for the Nan Shepherd Prize is what we would call a proposal, which is usually how non-fiction writing gets sold to a publisher, either via an agent or not. And so what I'm going to do is to talk through the different aspects of the proposal to give you some advice on what to do. A lot of these resources are on the Nan Shepherd Prize website, so do always make sure to have a look there. And also you will find a proposal template document, I think in either a Word doc and a PDF, if you'd like to use that. So please do go and use this to help you format your proposal. And so a proposal is composed of a synopsis, which is a one-page description of your book, a chapter outline, sample chapters totaling no more than 7,000 words, and a biographical note, no more than 500 words. These will be in the body of the email. And you do not have to have written a huge amount more than these 7,000 words to submit to the prize. So it's okay if you haven't finished writing the book. And we are going to start with a synopsis to start with. Great. So a synopsis is essentially a summary of everything you intend to cover in the book in a very concise form. It will work as an introduction, and it should just be 1 page long. Because you are including in your submission a writing sample that will showcase your writing style and how lyrical it is and beautiful and maybe experimental, your synopsis doesn't really have to do that. You can just write it very, very simply. And obviously in nonfiction, there's no such thing as spoilers, but here in the synopsis, we very much want to see everything that's in the book, including the end if it is surprising. And in your synopsis, you may want to include why you want to write this book, what qualifies you to do so. So obviously, if you come from an academic background or a more professional background in gardening or sciences, it may feel a bit easier, but sometimes it can just be a life experience that you've had, or particular experience that you've encountered, and also where the idea for the book began. Now, the synopsis is usually one of the toughest part to write. So if you're really struggling and you're finding it hard, congratulations, you're one of us. We all hate it. And if you're part of the 1% of the population who enjoys doing synopsis, we all hate you and envy you massively. So don't worry if you feel that the synopsis is really hard. It really is to do. And usually you may want to do your synopsis after you've worked on your sample writing and your chapter outline, because it'll be easier to sort of pick out the things you want to highlight in your synopsis. And then we move on to the chapter outline. Now, for the chapter outline, you'll want to include a description of more or less equal length for each chapter in your book. And these descriptions should cover, obviously, the main topic, but think about themes and examples and anecdotes that bring you to write about a specific topic. In terms of length, so obviously we want them to be equal length, but it depends very much on how long, how many chapters you have. So if you have around 10 chapters, so a small amount of chapters, you can have a page or two of description of the chapter. I mean, maximum, you can have a bit less. And if you have a book that has over 20 chapters or a lot of sub-chapters, then this description could be just half a page or a paragraph. So it doesn't have to be hugely long in itself. Now, concision is really good. If your outline is more or less the size of your chapter, you've done it wrong. So it's very much, broad strokes of the things you have in your chapter. You can include chapter numbers or chapter titles if you'd rather, and also divide it into sections. So it's really up to you, but it should be quite clear. And when you submit the writing and you've chosen a specific paragraph, a specific chapter as your writing sample, do make sure to note in the outline which one is the one that you've sent. Now, obviously, when we talk about chapter outline, what we also talk about is about structure and how do you structure a book of nonfiction. Now, there are very different ways to do that. If we can just get the next slide. Yes. So the structure is really hard to find it, and you may have to write your way into it. But ideally, it should make sense and it should be quite dynamic. You should be able to take the reader on a journey, whether it's a physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, philosophical, any of this. We as the reader, but also the agent and the publisher, want to be swept up by your narrative, and we really want to share in your passion for the subject. So I thought I'd highlight a handful of sort of typical structures that are used in nonfiction and especially in nature writing to give you a bit of an idea of what works. And so one of the most popular one is a linear and chronological structure. Obviously, nature has given us the best possible structure with seasons. And so you will find a lot of nature writing that is actually divided either by seasons, by months. So I have behind me, but they are very, very tiny. But obviously, Marshall's book Uprooted is one of those and follows the season. And you have many other books that are like this. So this is very much one that is quite a helpful one. But one of the things you need to bear in mind if you're choosing this type of structure is that you do not need to write about absolutely everything that happened within that season. So keep your writing and in both your outline and your sample chapter on your themes and the topic of your book. So feel free to not write about things that you feel aren't really relevant to the main part of the topic. Another structure that's quite popular in nature writing is one that is following a journey you're undertaking. Now, that journey may be a physical journey. I have here the brilliant Jessica J. Lee's Two Trees Make a Forest, which is about her traveling around Taiwan. And you also have the brilliant Jeannie Reddy's Wonderland, that is actually both a physical journey and a spiritual journey. And Jeannie will be giving some brilliant workshops in person around Scotland later on this month. No, we're the end of the month, next month, around Edinburgh. So do make sure to do this. And so your journey, obviously, if it's a specific walk or swim, you'll find the sort of rhythm of it quite promptly. But it can be whenever you're writing about a journey that you don't exactly know when it starts and when it stops. So do keep your mind open to surprises that will come up as you do your journey. And then another one is to structure your book by theme. So this is quite popular if you come a bit more from an academic background, or if you're taking either sciences or history, and you're really looking at the nature from you want to analyze every aspect of it. So the brilliant Cal Flynn, Islands of Abandonment, is one of these books. But on the more lyrical side, you also have our first winner, Small Bodies of Water, which is just up here, which is a series of essays. And therefore, there's a slightly different theme for each essay. But there is a thread connecting all of them about girlhood and belonging and food as well, and nature. And so whenever you're structuring a book by theme, something to keep in mind is both the order in which you are structuring your chapters. Is there a way into these chapters? And to also make sure to pay attention to the transitions between all these different sections. So usually working on transitions and order is something that goes hand in hand whenever you're doing a book by theme. And of course, one of the last one is that you're structuring your book with a mixture of the above. So for example, you may want to structure your book in different timelines. So 2 timelines, but going a bit, in different directions. So the Outrun is one of these, which has 2 different timelines. There are loads of different ways where you can have technically a journey, but actually each chapter is a bit of a deep dive in a specific aspect of a topic that you're talking about. There's really, there are no rules in structure, but you'll see that whenever you're struggling to find a structure, and then when you think that it clicks, this is where you will find a really successful and dynamic structure. So if you're still struggling a little bit with this, do have a look at the books on your bookshelves or in your local bookshop or library to see how books within nonfiction, doesn't have to be nature, are structured, and especially the order of chapters, and have a look if it's something you can get inspired by for this. And also a small reminder that a large part of writing is rewriting. So it can be that it is within the act of writing that you find your structure, whereas you maybe have spent a month trying to figure out a way in this book and you haven't managed. So if you can't really find a structure, don't panic. Maybe write your way into it, because the right structure will come out at some point, and so you'll be writing towards it. And so we have also the sample chapters. So for the Nan Shepherd Prize, you need to include 7,000 words of sample writing. What is great with nonfiction as opposed to fiction is that it doesn't have to be the start. So you get to cherry pick the very best of your writing, subject wise and like writing wise. So if you have something that is very gorgeous and lush description of nature, put it in. If you have a really interesting investigation into something, to do with nature, or some bits of journalism, put it in. It's going to be great. So pick your best writing. And of course, whenever you're sending sort of the sample chapters, do have a think about your book as a whole, and make sure that, that you do have nature in that sample writing. You would be surprised. Absolutely include nature. So that's one thing. But maybe if your book is a mix of style, maybe include a chapter that is a bit more memoir, or add a chapter that's a bit more research heavy. Think about it. Make sure that everything that you're sending is representative both of your style and of the book that you're writing. And I think after that, we're going to move to a biographical note. So this is a bio that will come, and it's not necessarily a biography that is like the one you see when you open a book. So very much here, this is to show us who you are, and it is very short. So it is quite a feat to manage to do this, but sometimes, you just get a clarity from it. So what you want to showcase here is that you are the best person to write this book, either because of your life experience, etc. And therefore you want to include any personal experience or anything that connects to the subject or to writing as a career. If you've had previously published short bits of poetry or anything like that, do include that, including your agent details, social media account, literary prizes you've been nominated for or won. And then you also have to include information on why you feel underrepresented in nature writing. Now, I know from my experience of being on the other side of the prize that a lot of people are struggling with this a bit, and it's not essentially, it's not meant to be difficult. We wanted it to be as open and as inclusive as we could. Therefore, the prize is based on self-identification. And the idea is for people to be like, yes, actually, I am underrepresented. And the idea, if you're not really sure, the rule of thumb we've been using is that if you can think of several, emphasis on several, books that represent your absolute entire 100% experience of nature, then it is possible that you are not underrepresented. But if you have only a handful of books at all, or some books on one part of your identity and some books on another, that means that you are underrepresented. And in doubt, just apply. It doesn't hurt to apply. So remember, concision is best, and do send over in your application. And if you have any questions, you can send a question to the Nan Shepherd Prize team on the info inbox to make sure, if you just want to double check.
Definitely. I'll just add to that as well, that there's no question that is kind of too small, and we're very happy to answer anything. If you've also got any difficulties with the application as well, just get in touch. It might be that you need to submit in a slightly different way, and that's absolutely fine. We can make those arrangements. Great. So I just wanted to remind people of some key dates as well, in case you haven't got a note of them when you are thinking of applying. So our kind of submissions windows, 31st of May, it closes quite soon on the 25th of August, but you still also got plenty of time, especially now that you've had such a crash course note from Caro. Thank you so much. That was brilliant, Caro. And then we'll be doing a long listing for September, a shortlist in October, and then a winner in November. So there'll be lots of things to look forward to along the way, and more material up on the website and all that sort of thing. I wonder if also, Caro, you would be able to speak a little bit about the process from submissions to through to longlist, shortlist, and winner from the previous years. That you were there just to kind of demystify that a little bit, because I know that when we say that that's long list to short list, and just kind of what that process was like.
Right. So the way that it works, so we get a lot of entries. Can't remember how much we got the last couple of times, but over 100. And we have a lovely panel of readers at Canongate. So everyone joins at lunchtime. And usually they're baked goods, and we read the entries. And so each entry is read by at least 2 different people within Canongate, and as well as the, in addition to sort of the organizers, so Megan and I used to read all the entries. So they would be quite a big amount of readers, and then we would all fill in a little one-pager where we describe the book, and we say how much we love the writing, how much we love the concept of the idea for the book, and our overall impression. And then we just, through this, because there are hundreds, like 170, I think we got. But because there are so many, a selection has to be made, unfortunately, though I really wish we could shortlist everyone and everyone wins. But we do a long list of all the sort of books that everyone's really, really loved, and that really, had that extra little something, though it is always very difficult. And then, Megan and I, and obviously it'll be a group of several people at Canongate now with a new team, we'll sit down and actually do a long list and a short list. And obviously in the first year, we hadn't planned on doing a long list, but we just could not make a decision. So we decided to create a long list. And so titles are long listed and short listed. And once you have the short list, it goes to all the judges. So I'm one of them this year. Very excited. And usually every shortlisted and long listed writers, because we have all of these feedback forms from so many different people within Canongate, we will give detailed feedback to these people so that they can continue either tweaking their proposal or whatever advice. We also do phone calls or Zooms to explain the sort of publication process and the behind the scene. So very much so, hopefully the hope is that long listed and shortlisted writers outside of the winner do find agents and publishers. And so many have, you know, so you have the brilliant Sarah Thomas had her memoir, The Raven's Nest, from the first year. JC Nyala had her 1917 Portals published, and has her memoir with Little Toller out next year. You also had Vic Bennett, All My Wild Mothers, published just last year as well during the pandemic. So there are a lot of writers who have found agents and publishers, and many more to come as well. So it is very much an opportunity for this. Yeah, and then the judges meet for deliberation for the shortlist.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for breaking that all down. It's just really, I think it's really helpful to know as well that the long list and short list can be such a kind of springboard to other things.
Definitely.
So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And I would also mention that our judging panel this year, which we're really excited about, such a good lineup, is obviously the wonderful Caro, but then we've also got Jason Allen Payzant, we've got Claire Ratinon, we've also got Helena Gonda, who will be editing the book later on at Canongate for the winner. And then we've also got the wonderful Peggy Hughes, who runs the National Centre for Writing as well. So yeah, brilliant lineup, and all your work will be in safe hands. I wonder now as well if we just move on to some questions, because I can see that we've got a few already coming in, and I know that there'll be a few more as well. And this is really an opportunity for you to ask anything, whether it's about the prize, whether it's about the publication process, whether it's about getting representation, because you know you've got Caro here as well with that hat on. So any question you like, and we'll just try to get through as many of them as possible. But if there's something that you feel like we haven't covered and that you want to cover, please do just get in touch, and we can help. I will also send around a feedback form as well at the end. If you guys could complete that, that would be great. And there's also the chance to raise anything that hasn't been touched on this.
So I can see quite a few questions in the Q&A. I've answered one. Someone asked if it was okay to query me and submit to Nine Prize. Yes, it is okay, as long as you're transparent. We have yes, it happens in these things, so as long as you're transparent, it's okay. Though do bear in mind that I am currently closed for submissions because I have a lot of reading at the moment. But you can do both, so there's no issue about that. Claire, do the chapter outlines need to be double spaced?
We've got a full breakdown of what it should look like, but I don't think double spaced is one of the requirements on there. I mean, as long as it's legible, as long as it's page numbered, that's the really important thing as well, and got names and stuff on it. That's the main thing. To be double spaced is not, no, we won't throw it out.
And if there's any issue with a file that we either can't open or can't read, we will just email you back for asking you to resend it. So don't worry at all. There
seems to be some sort of myth that if things aren't formatted exactly right, that they're kind of going to go on the slush pile, which is not true at all.
Right. So how strict is the 7,000 word limit? Okay, so it is strict in the sense that don't send 8,000, but if it's 7,052, you're fine. No one's actually counting them. But yes, and then you can include the biographical note after the signature in the covering email, as long as it's like clearly signposted, you're fine. Is there a minimum length that the chapter sample needs to be? There isn't. Like, it needs to be essentially, if you're describing the book, it should be several pages, obviously. Oh yeah, no, sorry, you didn't say outline, you said chapter sample. That's me. Ideally, you need to have as much as possible. If you send only 2,000 words, it's not an issue in itself, but think about the people who are sending 7,000 words. It's easier for them to showcase their writing. So that's what you need to think about. essentially, for your thing. Okay. Is it okay if the sample writing includes one full chapter and part of another chapter? Yeah, that's absolutely fine. The very best of your writing, whether that's a few fragments of chapters, but do make sure to signpost. So if you'd like to say chapter 2, this is only a fragment, do say this, so that the readers get an idea of this. We're going through those. This is great. Do you need to be discussing your underrepresentation in the sample chapter? No, that's a very, very important question. Thank you so much, Rachel, for bringing that up. You do not need to write about your underrepresentation in your book. This is it can be on your underrepresentation, or it can be not on it at all. This is up to you. We only want to know in the biographical note, but other than that, your book can be completely different. So there's no issues about this at all. So it doesn't have to be in the sample chapter, it doesn't have to be in the outline or the synopsis at all. And what would you consider too short for a chapter? Oh, is it the same question, Ella? So Ella was asking the question, is it the same than chapter sample in total, or do you mean an individual chapter? I don't know if you can add an extra one, but I mean, it needs to showcase the quality of your writing. Sometimes a very small and fragmented style, if it is not the style of the book, may not showcase the best of your writing. So it depends. For example, Nina Mingya Powell's, the first winner of the prize, has a very fragmented style. So hers was actually quite a short extract because it showcased her writing. But think about how your writing is for the whole book. And if it's representative, then you can go quite short and fragmented. But otherwise, you may want to expand a bit more. Okay. So Caro is not me. Is asking, for the sample chapters, would it be appropriate to include some contextual information, for example, to explain where we are in the narrative up until the sample chapter? Yes, I think that would be incredibly useful, and would really, you know, think of the readers who will be reading your proposal. Setting the scene is always nice, so definitely do that.
I think that's such a good bit of advice just there that you said. I mean, think of the readers that are going to be reading this as well.
So anonymous attendee, how do you recommend we query you, Caro? Well, so you can go on my website, though I am currently closed for submissions. And there are loads of resources, so just go there and have a look. But if you are querying, you know, if you're sending to the prize, send to them, not to me. I will get it down the line, but you can both submit to the prize and to me. And then asking, and can you speak a bit more about the chapter outlines? How much detail is expected, and is a paragraph acceptable? So the length of the chapter outline, you can, of course, do a paragraph if this is what you have, but obviously it needs to showcase what there is in your book. So if you feel that you only have a paragraph, does that mean you don't have quite enough in your book to make up a whole book? Or is it instead that you know, actually it's very easily explainable, and you can do that. So try to flesh it out if it's quite short, and if it's currently a paragraph, in terms of what happens if you're undertaking a journey, for example, but flesh out the themes, flesh out some of these things to give more of an impression of what's happening in each chapter, if that makes sense. Sarah is very happy that we offer feedback. Yes, we do. It's great. And you didn't hear me that, but if you ask nicely, even if you haven't been long listed, some nice people every now and then could send feedback. But I didn't say this. So Jade is asking, any advice for the synopsis, please? I'm finding that part very difficult. So I'm drawing from the writing itself, but that's creating repetition and a style too wordy and detailed. Do you want to take this one, Claire, or would you like me to?
I mean, I'm sure we've both got different experience, but I would say that the easiest way that I found to navigate that is if you had to describe your proposal to someone else and you didn't have your work in front of you and you were talking to them as if you were talking to me, or how would you describe that? Because I think that's such a useful way of kind of trying to articulate and maybe summarize your work in a way, in a new way that you haven't thought of before, and in a way that someone else will immediately understand without knowing anything about the project or about you. So that's probably my bit of advice there. But then again, you know, I'm sure you probably have different advice, Caro, as well.
No, I think that's really good. I think trying to explain to someone what your book is about is usually finding these words that are a bit further away from, you know, the type of marketing writing that we all do in terms of copy and back of the book and, you know, movie trailer voice types. But rather, it is really tough to do a synopsis, and it's actually really hard to find a really good one, which sounds awful, but it's not. It's such an art that most synopses are actually just good. You know, like just fine. They explain the book and that's all you need to know. So don't worry too much about it. But in terms of repetition, that's the thing. Every word in the synopsis needs to earn its place. So you should not have repetition at all. So always try to condense in just one sentence to really give the idea.
And I would just add on to that as well that one of the resources which we will have on the website as well, and which I think will be really, really helpful to see some of these things kind of, you know, how they actually play out, is that very, very kindly, Marshall, last year's winner, has shared her proposal, her submission for the book that's coming out next week, Uprooting, for her book. And so that might help to see a few kind of things in context, and we can share a link to that as well. But don't be too scared, because she's that became a very polished proposal.
Right, so anonymous attendee is asking 2 questions. Is the plan to run the prize again in 2025 and keep it 2 yearly? It is the plan. Things may happen, but it is usually the plan. And if we aren't successful, can we resubmit the following year following any changes we make, or would it be better to submit a different idea? Now, Anna, actually, you can resubmit to the prize. You can actually resubmit if you've been longlisted or shortlisted. The issue is obviously either if you didn't make any list or if you didn't win, there was a reason. So you should try to, you know, update your proposal and maybe take the 2 years to work on it a bit more, or actually work on a new idea. Definitely, but you can technically, but you may not be successful, if that makes sense.
I'd also just add that part of the reason that we do that kind of 2-year cycle as well is so that it works in the kind of publication process and timeline. So if you think about it, so Marshall won in 2021, and the book at the end of that proposal that came through the prize is going to be publishing next week. So part of the prize is obviously the book deal with Canongate and representation, and so that publication process does just take a little while.
Yeah, right. How important is getting the title right? I'm struggling with that. It is so hard, titles. Oh my God. And if you end up being published, you'll notice that titles change all the time, This is like my specialty. I love changing titles. Yeah, so essentially find the best you can, but don't worry, someone will come down the line and tell you and change that title if it needs to be changed. So don't worry, no one's shy about changing titles down the line. So you're fine. Right, so anonymous attendee. I understand that the Nan Prize is for non-fiction nature writing, for which I have a proposal in the making. I wonder if Portobello Agency looks at fiction nature writing at all. Yes, I do look at adult fiction and non-fiction. I am currently closed for submission briefly this summer while I catch up on my reading. But otherwise, yeah, you can definitely send to me and you can find all the information on my website. How much is your chapter outline allowed to change? Yes, so this is a very good question, anonymous attendee. When you're in the business of nonfiction and things get sold on proposal, actually it happens that books evolve. So the evolution of a book and the writing of it is pretty organic, and it's something that we mostly expect, but it obviously evolves in something a bit deeper, or maybe another theme will crop up. If it becomes a completely different book, then it's a slightly different question. But yes, definitely the proposal and the chapter outline is a plan, and there's always wiggle room for it to evolve and change. What do you think, Claire?
No, definitely, absolutely. And that's part of the kind of joy of working with an agent and working with an editor as well, is that those ideas necessarily also are developed and that sort of thing. So it's very, very rarely that something lands and it's kind of, in publishable shape straight away. And I think even just that process of writing, as you say, yeah.
Right.
I think it's a similar sort of question from Leslie as well. But I think that might have also been answered.
Yes.
To give just now.
Great. And so another Caro, who is not me still, is asking, how broad is your definition of nature writing? That's very interesting, and we've actually kept it very open. Because obviously there are traditionally a lot of nature books that are strictly nature. The Living Mountain is one of them, though it is, partially philosophical and spiritual in some ways as well. The ones that are about a specific hiking or journey or walk or whatever it is. But the new crop of nature writing is what I like to call nature adjacent. So nature is a big part of it, but there is another side of the coin that is either memoir or journalistic or whatever it is. And so it's a very broad definition. Nature needs to be a large part of it, but not the only part and not the sole focus. And so you can play with this as you wish.
And I think that that's one of the brilliant things about having more voices and having more diverse voices in nature writing, is that category is kind of being opened up a little bit more than it previously has been. And so you're getting some really kind of cool and different things being done with this kind of broad umbrella term of nature writing.
Great. So Emma is asking, thanks so much for putting on this talk. I wanted to check whether it is better to send 7,000 words from a single chapter or from across chapters within the book. That's a very good question. It needs to be the best of your writing, but of course, if you put in 13 half paragraphs, it's not, it may be good individual sentences, but maybe not great to read as a chapter. So genuinely, it's a bit of a balancing act on your end. You do want, at least one chunky chapter. Love this term now. But you can have a few more fragments. Like, you don't have to have it from a single chapter. It's actually quite interesting to see a slightly different, if you have one theme in your one chapter, it's quite interesting to see a smaller piece of a different chapter. So that's good. And then anonymous attendee is asking, I'm a writer as well as a video artist. Is it appropriate to share a link to my artist website in the biographical note? Everything's connected. Absolutely. Put the link in. It's going to be great. We will click on it and be very interested in it.
I love seeing what other people do as well as writing as well.
Exactly. Very nosy. So we love it. So anonymous attendee is asking, is a heavy memoir element such as an in-depth life story essential, or can it simply chart a nature-related journey undertaken by the author? Absolutely. You do not have to have a memoir element to it. I know that a lot of nature writing at the moment is very memoir focused, but you don't have to have that at all. It can just be all nature. So you don't have to worry about that at all. Is the prize aimed at only lyrical nature writer? No, it is not. It is very much any kind of nature writing. So it can be more different. Actually, both Marshall and Nina are very different writers. So Nina's, the first winner of the prize, was lyrical, fragmented, interconnected essays. And Marshall is not as much. What would you say, Claire? We don't just want lyrical.
No, absolutely not. We want everything and anything. Yeah, no, definitely not. I think whatever style feels most comfortable to you and that you are confident in is going to be the best version of that book. So
so asking, is it possible to include photos that relate to the writing within the 7,000 word? Yes, you can, though probably, you know, the winner wouldn't be a sort of very illustrated book because it's more about the writing, but a handful of photos are absolutely fine. Sorry, and not I wasn't clear. So anonymous attendee is asking, you said you needed to be transparent in terms of submitting to Caro and the prize. Can you explain what you mean by this? Sorry, just if you're applying to the prize, just apply to the prize. And if you apply, if you submit to me, just say you applied for Nan Shepherd Prize. That's it. Just one line in the email. I don't think Nan Prize need to know unless I actually represent you. So you're fine.
Yeah, definitely. So it's just in terms of clearing up whether or not you might have representation already, agent representation at the point of applying for the prize, which is fine.
Yeah. Can I ask an absolute beginner's question? Always, Becky, please always ask them. Can you have no chapters in nonfiction? I can't think of any right now. Is it the nature of the form? Excuse me. Obviously thinking about 2025. Right. Yes, so you can not have visible chapters in your books, as in chapter name, etc. It exists. However, in the proposal, a lot of the proposal is not, you know, your chapter outline will not be in the book, but it is a helpful way to signpost what the book is about. So what you may want to do is just add a note to say that there would be no actual chapters, but you will, obviously, I'm assuming there will be some kind of order and parts to it. So just group them by parts. That makes sense to you to show how the narrative flows, but you don't actually need chapters themselves. And moving on to anonymous attendee. If you do not have social media / an agent / literary prizes / published stories, I'm very much a beginner. Do you need to include that? You do not have them in your bio, or can you leave it out? You can leave it out and it's okay. This is a prize for new writers. If you have no experience, that is fine. It's really not against you in any way, shape or form. It is just to get to know you better, because usually when you've published something or you've won a prize, we can just click on a link and have a read a bit more of your writing. That's it. So it's just because evidently we're very nosy, but that's absolutely fine to leave it out and there's no worries at all. Someone is asking, is it possible to resubmit now that we have seen your Zoom advice? Yes, absolutely. Just email right now the Nan Prize team to say delete this submission. I will resubmit, and then resubmit whenever you're ready. Great. So Annie is asking, should the chapter outlines reflect my writing style or be written in a simpler way like the synopsis? I would say a bit more like the synopsis. Definitely. So yeah. So just a bit more simply to convey the information, and then your writing sample will be there to show your writing style. Should you have already written or be close to finishing the book before applying? Well, anonymous attendee, do I have good news for you? No, you don't have to. This is the beauty of nonfiction. You don't have to. And so you can just have written this small extract, and that would be fine. You can apply. This is a book for new writers. This is a prize for new writers. So this is definitely what we're looking for. So you don't have to have finished the book at all.
I'd add as well that that's the same for if you were submitting nonfiction work to publishers as well. More often than not, a nonfiction submission is not a complete first draft. It's just a section and an outline. So kind of what you'll be doing for the Nan Shepherd Prize. It's only really in fiction proposals that it ends up being a complete first draft. I don't know if you would agree with that, Caro, but that seems to be the kind of standard.
Yeah. Fiction, full book. Non-fiction doesn't have to be the full book. So Lucy is asking, if we have epigraphs in mind for the chapter, should we include them? So you can, but it really will not affect your submission in any way, shape, or form. So you might as well keep the word count for your own words instead of quotes, if they're not as part of your narrative. But you can, but they won't bring anything more to your submission. And Gail, going back to the synopsis, no sorries, we love it. Is it to explain the start, middle, and end of the book, or is it more about themes with the content detail left for the chapter outline? It is both. So definitely start, middle, and end, explain what's happening. If there's any actual action, otherwise the sort of journey, intellectual or whatever that you are doing. But it is also good to hint at the themes as well. And ideally, you don't want your synopsis to repeat the chapter outline and vice versa. So pick and choose which way makes more sense for this. But as long as the information is there, either in the synopsis or the chapter outline, you're fine. So we have a few questions on agents, right? So one anonymous attendee is asking if you need an agent before submitting. No, you can have an agent or not have an agent. You're all good. You can apply in whatever way. And then someone is asking, any general tips for querying agents? I am not currently represented by one. So you don't need to be represented by an agent to apply to the Nan Shepherd Prize, which is great. And part of what you win is an option to be represented by me. So maybe this is a turn off, I don't know, after this session, but you don't have to. And so general tips for querying agents, really look at both. In the UK, there are two associations. So in Scotland, we have ASLA, which is the Association of Scottish Literary Agents. If you go on asla.scot, you can see all the literary agents in Scotland and look at their guidelines and submit to them. You also have the AAA, the Authors Agents Association, and there as well. So every agent who is both a member of ASLA and or AAA submits to a code of conduct. So it's always good to query these people before. And then you can get some great advice on how to query agents in the Writers and Artists book. So I would recommend it. And if you can't afford the book, it will be in libraries definitely, and they have a great website as well. And yeah, so you can just follow these tips, and especially follow guidelines of each individual agent, if you'd like to.
I'd say that also it's really helpful as well. I don't know if you agree with Caro, but kind of having a kind of core list of agents that you want to approach, and you can see that they represent a lot of the authors that you know and that you like and that you think you have a lot in common with, because then you're kind of really getting a sense of an agent that's maybe got similar tastes to you, an agent that's going to know your part of the market really well as well, which is going to be invaluable. So rather than doing that kind of like, rolling out hundreds of submissions all at one time, just making sure that you've got like a really tailored approach and know very well who you're submitting to will really help.
Yeah, and when you submit to agents, you should submit to a small handful in waves. So submit to like 8 agents, wait for feedback. Sometimes they will send you feedback that may help you edit your submission so that for your next wave, you have a slightly different sort of submission that may attract more attention. So don't submit to like hundreds of people in one go, because people usually don't reread. So if they turn down once, they will not read again. So always do in waves. And anonymous attendee is asking, what if you don't know what each chapter will include at this stage, if the journey is still underway? Well, this is really difficult, isn't it? Especially if it's a physical journey where you don't really know what you'll encounter. So in that case, it's fine for, the later chapters, especially to have a mention that says, I haven't done this journey yet. But do, in that case, beef up essentially the sort of themes and things like that, and anecdotes if you have more of that, so you can have a bit less on the journey and a bit more on everything else that's in the book.
I think as well that you could really kind of talk about the driving force for that journey as well, and the motivation for it, or the reason for it as well, because that'd be really interesting to hear whilst it's still ongoing.
Yeah. And then we have one last question. So if you have questions, please send them over. From anonymous attendee asking, if you have already won a literary competition of some kind and mentioned this in the bio, will you look up and read this other piece of writing? Well, it depends. Now I'm very curious, but we may do. We may or may not. I don't know. Is it secret? Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sometimes you do, don't you? So just see. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but we may do, and we're very nosy. Apologies if that's an issue. We don't have to, just tell us not to if you drive. And so an anonymous attendee asking, any advice for feeling daunted? Session has been great so far though, thanks. Thank you, we love you. Feel daunted. The best thing about the prize is that it actually doesn't matter if what you send is a draft at midnight on the night of the deadline. And let me tell you, you are not alone sending things to the wire. Whatever you have finished by the deadline, send it over. Because it's going to give you the experience of sharing your writing, which is really hard, especially if it's your first piece of writing that you're sharing. And to maybe receive feedback and to be part of this community. There have been so many people who found friends after knowing that they'd applied to the Nan Shepherd Prize, and they have done little communities and groups of writers. So it's actually really great. And there's really no negative, because at worst you do not get longlisted, but we have resources on the website about what to do if you haven't been longlisted. So there's no really reason to be daunted in what you have to do. And we hopefully have conveyed that we're, aside from being extremely nosy, a very nice and warm team reading the entry. So we're genuinely just really very much looking forward to reading. So yeah, we're delighted. So please don't feel daunted.
And I would say as well that there's also, going back to that kind of community thing that you were saying, Caro, as well, it's been really nice to see that as the prize progresses, it's not just people that have found each other kind of on the same, prize cycle, but it's also kind of previous shortlistees from previous winners that then end up being big kind of supporters and champions for the following years, which has been really, really great, and even previous judges and that sort of thing. So there's a really lovely, warm community waiting for you out there. Before everyone does dash off, because I'm aware that it's getting to past. Oh, it's just past past. And everyone has their evenings ahead of them. I would just ask if you could spare 5 minutes just to do our feedback form, which Alan is going to post in the chat now, along with all the other resources that we've been talking about. So if you want to grab any of those links, grab those. But it would be great to get your feedback on it. We've been able to do this and 5 other events that have been in person and kind of touring around Scotland because of really generous funding from Creative Scotland. And it's really, really helpful for us to get feedback, because it means we can do hopefully more events. We can build the prize, make it bigger, and get just keep doing it, make it bigger and better. So it'd be really helpful if you could spend 5 minutes doing that. I don't know what we can offer you in return apart from gratitude, but you have our gratitude.
Immense gratitude. But thank you so much, everyone, for being so lovely and for having such thoughtful questions for us. If you have any more questions, you can find us on social media. You can email the Nan Prize team. You can email me, though I'm, quite useless these days. So you ask the Nan Shepherd Prize team. And really, we just cannot wait to read all of your writing. So please take heart and take the jump to send us your writing.
Absolutely. Thanks again, all of you, and hopefully read all your work soon. See you later.